Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm Bruce.
You are?
I'm Bruce.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm Bruce.
And you're here. And we're excited that you're here because we're going to be talking about an old school fun topic. Usually at the end of August here. It's usually SummerSlam time. We know things have changed a little bit. About 30 years ago, SummerSlam 1994. My goodness. When I first say SummerSlam 94 to you, I mean, I think most fans think about what we're looking at here on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com. We used to call it the Undertaker versus the Underfaker. What do you remember most of all when I say SummerSlam 94?
Leslie Nielsen.
In
a heartbeat. That sums it all up.
How did that whole thing come to be where Leslie Nielsen got involved with you guys?
You know, I don't even know. It was, I think that he was available. I believe that the idea was born in his availability and that we had Undertaker versus Undertaker. The attraction kind of lent itself to, oh my God, there's a mystery. There's two Undertakers. Or is there? And Leslie Nielsen, a tremendous actor of Naked Gun fame, and Frank Drebin, the detective that solved many, many a baffling crime in his day, was going to be the guy that solves this mystery of the Undertaker. And he was going to go on the hunt to find the other Undertaker.
The chief celebrity detective, I think, is the official title. Was it a balance?
God, there was a job to be done, and he was the man to do the job.
Was there a balancing act between doing a spooky, supernatural angle and then the almost Leslie Nielsen slapstick shtick? Is that tough to balance here or not so much?
Well, I don't know that. First of all, the whole story was never a supernatural story. And I have someone putting something on my desk. I don't know why in the middle of the show.
You said someone. Are there strangers in your home, or is that?
Yes, okay. There's just some strange woman walked into my office with a bag and put it on there and then abruptly left. So it's probably a bomb. So
it's not Stephanie Prichard.
Well, I guess it was. I don't know.
You don't know what your wife looks like anymore? Have they been working you that hard?
With all these lights in my face and, that's very bright over here. So it's almost like someone from the witness protection program is coming in.
Where were you on the night?
Shadowy figure.
Yes, I get it. Hey,
you want to open up the package live on air?
No interest in that.
Okay.
Hey, so I think most of us remember Leslie Nielsen, at least folks listening around my age, call it late 30s, early 40s. The Naked Gun movies are what we remember Leslie Nielsen for. I'm curious, I'm not saying this to be argumentative. I'm trying to understand. Did you think that having Leslie do these skits in advance of WrestleMania would add pay-per-view buys, like someone was on the fence and now they're going to buy it because he was there? Or was it just a marketing campaign and get a little bit of crossover, but we knew probably not going to get a return we can see?
I think it was a great campaign because it was a campaign that was also helped financed by Domino's. Domino's was a sponsor of SummerSlam. So there's a lot of added income as well through Domino's. Domino's loved the spots. So the spots were to promote SummerSlam, to promote Domino's. And it was a general awareness outside of our vehicle to where people knew who Leslie Nielsen was. They knew who Frank Drebin was. And they, may watch that and go, oh, hey, this is interesting. Maybe I'm going to check this out because I'm a big fan of his. And Leslie did bring a certain element from outside of people wanting to sample our product. And I thought it was a great way to do it. And working with him was probably, when I go back and look at great weeks in the life of Bruce Prichard at WWF at the time, by God, it was working with Leslie Nielsen.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I can appreciate the opportunity to work with Domino's. That makes sense. And maybe it wasn't necessarily adding a bunch of pay-per-view buys, but if they see the commercial and they're interested and they watch the show, maybe a storyline could hook them. But servicing a sponsor, Makes a lot of sense. Hey, we've talked recently about Kane and the whole creation of that character, that the Undertaker had a long lost brother, so to speak, and you carried us down that rabbit hole. I think it's fair to wonder, is this too, this Undertaker, are there two of them? Is that also from the mind of Bruce Prichard, or where does the germ of that idea start to take shape?
Brian Lee was we'll call him a journeyman wrestler. Brian was a big guy, looked to have a future, looked to have possibility to become a star. He had the size and he could work. So Brian was around. Brian had been working in Smoky Mountain. Brian and Undertaker were friends. We would be out and people would go up to Brian while we were out and mistake him for the Undertaker. Oh, you must be the Undertaker. It happened several times. Happened with Undertaker there.
Okay.
So sitting there looking at him going, y'all could be brothers. You could be twin brothers. What if? Famous two words, man. What if? Because Ted DiBiase one time had enough money and enough resources as the $1 million man to have plastic surgery done on Earl Hebner to create a second Earl Hebner. So now there's two of them running around. And he made an exact, it was cloning. It's cloning. Let's just call it what it was. And we felt, well, the $1 million man would obviously have enough money to clone and make another Undertaker. And Taker had been gone off with an injury for enough time that if you were to bring someone back or bring the Undertaker back, let's make no mistake about it, we're going to plug the Undertaker returns. Have Ted DiBiase talk about the fact that the Undertaker will return and bring him out when there's nothing to compare him to. Bring the Undertaker back and have him go in the ring and have him wrestle a short match and doesn't need to do any lines or anything like that, and just have Ted DiBiase do all the talking for him, then that was an exciting prospect. And I think that I would dare say that people will tell you now, oh, I knew it right away. No, they didn't. No, you really didn't. Because the way that we shot it, the way that the building was lit, very hard to tell. Like, you probably could have fooled me if I didn't know. The first time that the Undertaker, or Brian Lee Undertaker, came out. So that was the idea. And then see what happens from there. If we can get this, could you actually have a program with Undertaker versus Undertaker? The possibilities were endless, but we had to get to the first one first.
Was it ever considered to have the quote unquote two Undertakers together? I mean, I know they're going to wrestle here, but was it considered that they may actually team up, that this Underfaker could actually become a quote unquote brother of sorts for the Undertaker?
I think anything was possible, but there was no, this was all one. This was a one-off, one and done. If Brian showed a lot of promise, then I think the possibilities were endless. There was never any plan beyond the one match at SummerSlam. So, they could have been tag team partners. They could have been foes for a while. We could have had an army of Undertakers under Ted DiBiase. So, it was... But you have to crawl before you can walk and before you can run. And this was in the infancy stages. We were going to crawl him to a fight in that crib and see what happens.
How instrumental, if at all, I don't know, I'm just asking, but this does feel like since Brian had been spending time in Smoky Mountain, that Cornette would have been an advocate for Brian Lee. Would that be fair to say?
I don't really remember. I don't really know. I know that Undertaker was, my brother Tom was.
Okay.
And I was.
You said earlier that, hey, you really didn't know that it was him. And a lot of the reports coming out of the house shows when he debuts in Canton, Ohio on May 24th, and then Erie, Pennsylvania on May 25th as the Undertaker. Brian Lee is wearing his hair in front of his face. He's got the costuming and the makeup to match the Undertaker. But the idea is he wrestles the majority of the match with his hair covering his face. And then right towards the end of the match, right at the finish, he's going to lift the hair out of his face and you get a glimpse, and it leaves fans wondering, wait, is that really him? Maybe not. That's certainly the idea, is we want to pipe in Mark Calloway, the real Undertaker's voice for promos. We want to use that music, the styling. We want the fans at these live events to think it's the Undertaker and then maybe question it at the end of the match. Is that fair to say that's the idea in the execution, at least at first?
So those who want to question it, they could question it. The great thing about it was a lot of people didn't question it right away. What the question was why is Undertaker with Ted DiBiase? And that made you think, God, why, how could Ted DiBiase get the Undertaker to come and work for him? It didn't make any sense. And yet I'm watching it. So if you're watching it, your eyes, you're looking at him going, oh shit, man, that's him. He's there. He's with Ted DiBiase. Then as a viewer, I'm thinking, okay, now what's this next story? Just because you know the end of the story, you automatically go to, oh, they were trying to do. You just follow along, go with the bouncing ball and get engulfed in the story. The story was Ted DiBiase now has control of the Undertaker. That was the story from the beginning.
You mentioned earlier that the Leslie Nielsen opportunity, sort of a joint venture with Domino's, that was reported at the time as being a $250,000 corporate sponsorship. Would that have been, I'm not saying the biggest to date, because I know that the business certainly had a bigger boom, but in 94, that's probably one of your bigger endorsements for a campaign like this, right?
It was very good. The main significance of it was the first title sponsor for a pay-per-view.
There you go.
So that was the significance of it. And we did quite a bit. And off of that, God, I think it had something like, those vignettes had 60 million impressions. The numbers were just incredible as far as how many eyeballs actually saw that stuff for Domino's. So when you go back and you do a report, so like when you do an economic impact report to see how many times, how many people did you track? What did this do? What did that do? This was probably one of the most successful campaigns. It definitely was for us at the time. It blew everything out of the water, but it was arguably one of the most successful campaigns as far as getting eyeballs on Domino's pizza that they had ever experienced.
It's a really cool campaign. Yes. I wasn't watching wrestling at the time, but I remember my parents ordered Domino's, and there was actually a flyer on the top of the Domino's box promoting SummerSlam. And it's called Domino's Delivers WWF SummerSlam. And you guys are constantly mentioning it on television throughout July and August, even throughout the pay-per-view. You're pushing people and the pre-show. You're pushing people to make sure that, hey, if you're going to enjoy SummerSlam, the best 1-2 punch is to pick up the phone and order some Domino's too. I just thought that was a brilliant campaign because, and I know in more recent years we've heard, the NFL sort of attach themselves to pizza. And they've had campaigns and such. But this is really the first time I remember anything like this happening in wrestling. And when I, watched wrestling pay-per-views with my friends, we certainly ordered a pizza. This was really, really genius stuff. But I'm curious, why didn't we see more of it? Like, why would Domino's have not locked this up and said, dude, give us SummerSlam every year? That was great.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think that the ability to place the product inside of our programming was really intriguing and was something that you could specifically measure. You could go back, and obviously we over delivered a lot by how many times we mentioned Domino's, how many times it was on the screen, and what have you. The promotion was excellent, and they were good people to work with. So everybody was happy. But then, you go on, okay, who's next? And you move on to bigger and better things. It was a different time because we weren't used to every pay-per-view have a title sponsor. That's just wasn't something we did. And now we're doing it. It's very successful. It's a lot of work, but I think that the benefits are there for it. And it was, not just for Domino's, but the idea was that other sponsors would see this and want to be a part of it. And I think that did help a lot with M&M Mars, Snickers, and folks like that wanted to come in and be a part of the presenting title sponsor of WrestleMania and other live events and the pay-per-views. It was, I think it was a success. And I think that it was one of those things that paved the way for where we are today.
I love talking about old sponsorship opportunities. I remember, us talking about the Dr. Pepper stuff and the Taco Bell stuff for Royal Rumble 97. And to go back and see that, man, this is sort of the beginning of that for WWE with Domino's here in 94. It's pretty fun. I want to talk a little bit about Brian Lee. The Torch would write that, he's been best buddies with The Undertaker going back to their Memphis days. So much so, that Brian Lee was actually in Mark Calloway's wedding party the year prior to this. So these guys have been pals for a long time. Obviously, The Undertaker is a well-established character, has a little bit of stroke, if you will, within the company. But it's written that Brian Lee had been considered within the industry to be lacking the charisma and interview skills to be a national main eventer, despite his considerable size and competent in-ring ability. We know that he's going to stick around as Chains, and there's going to be other opportunities for him with the Disciples of Apocalypse. We know he's going to have a cup of coffee with ECW as well. Why don't you think Brian Lee enjoyed more success in the WWE?
I think Brian couldn't get out of his own way. Very talented.
What does that mean specifically?
Well, it means that he kept screwing up.
Okay.
It meant that he would do stupid things to do stupid things. If he had been a little more professional and shown a little bit just more of a willingness to do things, and look, you want somebody that's going to come to the table with ideas and, I can do this, we could do that, and all these different things. Or just wait for somebody to tell you what to do. And Brian was, I'll wait until somebody tells me what to do. And then I'll just do as little as I have to do to get through it. And I like Brian. He's a funny guy, great personality. But if you were depending on him for something, he wouldn't be in that top 5 or that top 10 list of guys that, boy, I would depend on them to make sure this got done. So with that, this was a favorite Undertaker because they were friends.
Yep.
And it was also an intriguing story that I thought, this could be cool.
Yeah.
You look at it, they look alike. Yeah, we can make this work. This could be cool. And then it could be even cooler if it could go on from there. But at least the one-off, I thought, could be really cool for Undertaker's return.
Let's mention what the Torch wrote. It's already appeared on AdSlicks. It'll be Undertaker versus Undertaker as the marquee match at SummerSlam. The timetable now appears to have them feuding through WrestleMania next year and eventually form a tag team. I mean, we saw that report in both the Observer and the Torch. It makes me wonder, maybe was there something to that?
No.
But you think Brian got in his own way and maybe that?
There was never, again, this is going all the way back then and before that even, where Wade Keller and Dave Meltzer just make up lies because it's what they think. And then if they don't do it, they change plans. No, folks, we never had an intention ever of having them be a tag team. This is a one-off, but it's better reading for these people to just speculate, but they speculated as fact. And when nobody else knows, there was nobody to disprove them and to challenge their lies, because we stayed in our world, they stayed in their world. And those that knew laughed at it. Those that didn't know believed it. And that's the sad part, because there are a lot of people who actually believe that crap that's written. But no, there was no plans to make them a tag team. The plan was this, and then we would see after that. Vince, frankly, wasn't. Vince was not high on really even the idea of the Undertaker versus the Undertaker at first, because there's one Undertaker, and so the idea of having a tag team of Undertakers in Vince's mind split the spotlight and would not have worked. So Vince was vehemently against it. But at the same time, we were taking a wait and see approach to it to see, could we get more matches out of this? What else could we do? But there was absolutely zilch, none ever planned to team these guys together. Now, whether or not Brian Lee went out, called Dave Meltzer or Wade Keller and said, hey, they're going to make me a tag team and I'm going to do this, I have no idea.
I got you.
But I can tell you internally.
Yeah, never discussed.
People make the actual decisions. No, there wasn't.
Guys, do you know how excited I am? We've got a college game day this weekend. That means Alabama football is back. You've heard me talk about it on the program forever and ever. Roll Tide. I get asked all the time, hey, what does that mean? Dude, come on. I was born and raised here in Alabama, and college football has been a religion. I don't know if you saw, but we even just named the field in Tuscaloosa after Nick Saban. And I don't think we should stop there. That dude could be the damn governor of Alabama. I'm such a big Nick Saban fan. I can't believe this is a real thing, but he's actually going to be the guest on the premiere episode of the Triple Option. Yeah. We're living in a new age of football, and with the expanded college football playoff, NIL, conference realignment, and the increasing popularity of the draft, the landscape is changing and quickly. And that's where the new podcast, The Triple Option, comes in. Each week, 3-time national championship coach Urban Meyer, Heisman Trophy winner Mark Ingram II, Roll Tide, and former WWE champion Rob Stone. Is this real? Team up to bring on the biggest guests in college football, pro football, and anything related to the culture of the game. They cover it all, from the top stories to recent changes and shifts in the game, the culture surrounding it, and everything in between. Urban Meyer brings his championship pedigree perspective as a head coach. Ingram brings one of the game's best players ever. And well, Rob provides thoughts from over 2 decades covering the game. I'm a big fan of these type of podcasts where you get a chance to take a look back and talk about current stuff. If you like the format that we do on some of my shows, where we're talking about the nostalgia and we're talking about the current stuff, I think you're going to love this, especially being a college football guy. I mean, who's more decorated than Urban Meyer? I mean, you want to talk about a brilliant football mind, whether you were a fan of his or not, you have to appreciate his knowledge. Same with Mark Ingram. You have no idea as an Alabama fan what a big deal it was when he won the Heisman Trophy. I can't wait to listen to this, but I do want to know, how the hell did Rob Stone get this gig and not me? Hey, let's go ahead and get in the game today. Follow and subscribe to the Triple Option on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the Triple Option on YouTube. New episodes drop Wednesday mornings. That's the Triple Option on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget the Triple Option on YouTube. New episodes drop Wednesday mornings. When it actually makes television, of course, they're hearing about these in live reports in late May, but it actually happens in June on television. And here's what Wade Keller wrote at the time. The makeup artists and those in television production deserve real praise for this one, because aside from the small percentage of fans who know better, I doubt anyone else would even suspect this was a different person playing the part. Lee looked a lot more like the Undertaker than Jim Hellwig looked like the Ultimate Warrior when he came back. I thought that was fantastic, because I remember as a kid, and it's really weird how this traveled sort of pre-internet. almost everyone my age who grew up watching the WWF, when the Ultimate Warrior came back at WrestleMania 8, we said, well, that's not the original Ultimate Warrior. The first one died. This is the replacement one. Because he looks so different. Like every kid I knew believed, oh, this is the second Ultimate Warrior. This isn't the original. And it was the same guy. But here we've got someone imitating the Undertaker, and he looks more like the original Undertaker than Jim Hellwig looked like the original Ultimate Warrior. Great job. Do you remember anybody who helped in that process to position Brian Lee to look like the Undertaker? Folks maybe who don't get shout outs or acknowledgement. Do you remember any unsung heroes from makeup or what have you we could shout out?
Yeah, look, man. I mean, it was a great job by a great team. We had the outfits made by the same people who make Undertaker stuff. We did makeup exactly like we did Undertaker. Hats off to Jerry Lawler, who actually drew the tattoos, hand drew the tattoos on Brian Lee's arms to match the Undertaker's.
Wow.
So, we had those tattoos made and you put them on, but it wasn't as advanced as it is now for movies and what have you. Movies are able to cut and do different things to make things look a lot better. We're live. We didn't have that ability. So Jerry Lawler, after the stencil was put on and the tattoo was put on, Jerry would then trace over it. He would draw it and then color it in with a pen, with like a ballpoint pen. And it was incredible. And Jerry enjoyed doing that. But I think that was a big difference too, man, because it was so close. He would sit there and look at Undertaker's arm and draw it on Brian Lee's. So hats off to Jerry Lawler.
What a great little nugget of information. I'd never heard that before. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. I want to ask you about Paramount, because Paramount Pictures, yes, the Hollywood movie studio that you're familiar with, is teaming with both Titan Sports, the parent company of the WWF, and Domino's Pizza to put out a customizable 12-page SummerSlam direct mail piece, which is also going to promote some upcoming August pay-per-view programming. This all happens in the month of July. The campaign, what comes in the mail, says, "So hot, it's scary." And they're, of course, promoting SummerSlam and Domino's and a couple of Paramount movies, Addams Family Values and Wayne's World 2. The write-up in Multi-Channel News would say that this is going to cost Titan 5 cents per piece. And they even have a quote from Stephanie McMahon saying the demographics for the titles and the event are similar. We're hoping to get that crossover audience from the event side. Addams Family, Undertaker, Underfaker. I could get it. Leslie Nielsen, Wayne's World 2. I'm with it. Who are the movers and shakers making a deal like this come together with Paramount? People in the marketing department, or would that be somebody else?
I have absolutely no idea. I didn't even remember that. And
yeah.
It's, look, you have your folks at the pay-per-view from Viewer's Choice still, even at that time, that they are always looking for something. And we are always looking for something to be able to go out and partner with. We can be a part of something larger that the mainstream audience is going to look at and go, "Oh, hey, yeah, this is cool." Oh, when they have WWF too. So it's a team, man. It's just a great team that pulls all this shit together and makes it all work.
Let's talk about what's happening on the other channel. I mean, we've talked about this Brian Lee opportunity, the fun creative storyline with The Undertaker, Domino's, Leslie Nielsen, Paramount. It feels like we're pulling out a lot of big guns here. I just want to add context to this. July is when on the other channel, we're seeing Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair finally happen on pay-per-view, but it's for WCW. I know that this is pre-Nitro and it's pre-NWO, so it's pre-Monday Night Wars. But do you think that Vince was keeping up with what Hulkster was doing on the other channel? I mean, it feels foreign almost to see Hulk Hogan in a WCW ring at that point. What was Vince's thinking at the time, if you had to guess about all that?
I mean, look, we were definitely aware of Hulk being in WCW because he at the time. We didn't know if he was going to come back for us or go to them. He obviously went to them. And we were definitely aware of it and felt that if there was anybody that could help, turn the tide for WCW, that it was Hulk. So we were aware of it. His initial foray into WCW wasn't sure as hell wasn't what they expected, because it's just kind of like, okay, Hulk's here, but it wasn't that huge boom that they were looking for. He was just another guy put in just other guys. And so that quickly was producing the same result that he was getting with us, where we were like, there's got to be something, you got to do something new. He's got to go get a rest, whatever it is, reinvent the wheel. And, that was just the reality of it. And Hulk didn't do anything for their business at first. Probably did from a merchandise standpoint, because they didn't have merchandise sold for anybody else. But the Hulkamania shit, that sold. And that was something that was unique to Hulk. And in that regard, he probably made a difference. But as far as the gates and everything else, creatively, what he was doing, it was, I think, pretty lackluster at best.
I know you said that was what was happening in WCW, but maybe you mean at the end of his WWE run, because Bash at the Beach 94 is an all-time WCW record for pay-per-views and gate and et cetera, et cetera. Like, it was a real high watermark. And it does feel like,
for them.
Yes, for them. I'm not saying it ever compared to a WrestleMania. I want to be clear about that. I'm just saying it was successful, and it makes me wonder, are we thinking, hey, because I don't know, I'm not there, but it does feel like maybe perhaps once upon a time, Hulk Hogan may have wondered, was his name, and maybe other people wondered, was Hulk Hogan's name bigger than the WWF? And this
I'm sure Hulk thought that.
Well, that's what I was getting to, is it feels a little bit like Brady and Belichick, right? To use a different sports reference, or maybe even Kobe and Shaq. Like, when they separate, people are looking at both and wondering, hey, who's going to enjoy the most success apart? We've seen how much success they enjoyed together.
Yeah.
How much will they enjoy apart? And if we know anything from the outside looking in about Vince, is that he is fiercely competitive. And the idea that he might have the biggest star working now for a competitor, and he's competing against his bigger star, I could really feel like that would get Vince's motivation up, if that makes sense. Am I way off base there?
No, absolutely. And it was, look, it was very personal. I think it was personal to both guys. And for Vince, I think Vince felt very betrayed. I think, Hogan felt very betrayed. I think they both blamed the other. And yet they both were very heavily reliant on each other. They needed each other. And neither one wanted to admit that. So you've got that dynamic, that pride dynamic coming in. But, it's we're definitely looking and seeing what they're doing now, because they do have Hulk, and Hulk was, 1-1 with WWF for so many years. So when you see Hulk, you think you're looking at WWF.
It is interesting to take a look at like SummerSlam and what was happening on the other channel. There's going to be 235,000 buys for SummerSlam, the show we're talking about here today. The month prior, when WCW was doing Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, that show came in at 225,000 buys. So this is, although it's pre-Monday Night War era, this is about as competitive as we would ever see WCW. Like, to go worldwide buys, I think was $300,000 for SummerSlam. Domestic was $235,000. To be close is a really big deal for WCW, because they had been
huge.
Yes.
Huge deal for WCW. But at the same time, I think WCW was looking for a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think people expected a lot more. There were things that were said during that time prior to that. Well, Hulk, now that we have Hulk, we can go run stadiums and we can do 90,000 people in the Silverdome type of thing. And, Hulk did a lot better than what they had there. But it quickly also was like, okay, I've seen it. Now move on next. Because I don't think the Dungeon of Doom shit did very fucking well.
No, nobody liked the Dungeon of Doom. I think everybody, and they went back to the well so many times on Hogan Flair. It did feel like, they put Flair in after the July pay-per-view. They did a retirement match with Flair at Halloween Havoc. We were trying to put as much Hogan Flair together as we could. And then when the wheels came off there, the Dungeon of Doom was not all that fun. Let's talk about what is fun. When we see the real Undertaker start showing up at TV tapings. So during the actual show that airs for television, we see Brian Lee cosplaying the Undertaker. But then once the cameras are off for the live crowd, we bring out with Paul Bearer, not Ted DiBiase, the real Undertaker. And fans are eating this up and love it. And what's fun is we've got a color variation now. And I'm not a super Undertaker fan where I know all the iterations. I do have friends in my life who, well, that's when he had the purple gloves. Well, that's when he had the gray gloves and blah, blah, blah. But we did start to see, okay, Brian's going to wear gray. And now that the Undertaker's back, the real Undertaker, if you will, Mark's going to wear purple. It's a subtle thing, but it's a cool thing. Take us through that.
Well, the Undertaker, every time that he went away and came back, he evolved. There was something about him that was different, whether it was a splash of color, whether it was going from the shirt to the singlet, whether it was a different hat or a teardrop or what have you. There were always changes and an evolution in the Undertaker character. The Brian Lee Undertaker was the original. It was the very first Undertaker that you saw and the one that, everybody remembers from Brother Love walking him out from the very beginning. And that was part of the presentation was, no, I had the real Undertaker. I have the real Undertaker because just look at how he looks. The same gear, the same, all this stuff. I don't know who this guy is dressed up in purple and all this other stuff with Paul Bearer, but obviously Undertaker or Paul Bearer went and found him somebody that looks like the Undertaker to portray the Undertaker because I have the real one.
I do want to talk to you about what you were doing with the real life Mark Calloway. He's off TV during this period, but he is still working international tours in shows that are routed to be adjacent to the international tours like Hawaii. Like after you're doing this whole storyline of his television death and resurrection, if you will, he's still appearing on some of those shows. Are you trying to serve two masters here? Like creatively, we don't really want to do that, but at the same time, we need some marquees to sell. We need some big matchups to sell tickets. People want to see the Undertaker. Is there a strategy involved in that, or is it not a concern? Like it's only 2 months. No. Who cares?
It's not a concern. And we were able to advertise the Undertaker and we gave them the Undertaker.
Yes.
And most of that was international markets.
This is around the same time we've got Vince McMahon conducting in-ring interviews with Bob Backlund, talking about what he's failed to accomplish 2 weeks earlier when Jerry Lawler interviewed Bob Backlund and the show was just running short on time. So we've tried this before. We're going to do it again. It's basically a 15-minute in-ring interview where McMahon is running down all of Backlund's accomplishments in the WWF, talking about his title reign and all that jazz. And Backlund's saying that no one could escape his chicken wing. And then McMahon's going to use Backlund's old cliche against him, saying that every move has a counter move. And so Backlund issues a challenge for anyone to try to escape his chicken wing. And if they could, he would retire from wrestling for good. And a writer for the WWF magazine accepts the challenge. McMahon's going to ask the writer, who I think is Lou, if he was really trying to escape. And he said yes. And Backlund applied it, goes berserk. He takes the guy to the mat. He's wrenching on the hold. It's taking several different referees and Vince McMahon to pull Backlund off the guy. Pretty fun little deal. I know this is bizarro to even think about Backlund back in the WWF in 94. What did you think of the interview? Part 2 here, not the Lawler version, but the McMahon thing, and slapping the chicken wing on somebody from the magazine. What did you think of this angle and execution?
I loved it. I mean, I loved it. It was a new presentation of Bob Backlund. It wasn't the squeaky clean Bob Backlund. It was more into, I believe that the heel version of Bob Backlund was much more based in reality than anything Bobby had done up until that point. Because Bobby, man, a little crazy. He is a fanatic when it comes to training and physical fitness. He had a different outlook on life. If you asked him for his autograph, he asked you to recite the presidents. And if you missed one, you didn't get an autograph. Then he asked you to do it backwards. That was Bob Backlund. Bob was a heel at heart. And I thought Bob was a very good heel. I think it was a great presentation of him because he was scary. Bob ever hooked you, you were hooked. And this was a great way to display that, in that, you know, Bobby's showing people that if he puts his cross-faced chicken wing on you, you're not going anywhere if he doesn't want to let you go.
It is a real move, and he's having some fun with it here. And it's interesting, you know, we talked earlier about what's happening on the other channel, and we've talked about how you're working with Paramount and you're working with Domino's, but you're also doing something else that's kind of interesting for SummerSlam 94. It'll be the first ever event held at the grand opening of the United Center. It's a 23,000 seater. It's a state-of-the-art facility in Chicago, and previous pay-per-view shows from the area. And usually when I think about wrestling in that area, I think about the Rosemont Horizon, which was the home of multiple WrestleManias and so forth. What did you think about stepping out when business was a little down and trying to run a 23,000 seater? Like, on the one hand, it's awesome to be first in the building. It's awesome to have such an opportunity and such a cool new building. And it is a fun marquee matchup where you got some support from third parties, but 23,000 seats was a big ask in 1994, was it not?
I think for our pay-per-views, not really. I think that was kind of on par where we were. You know, look, it was a new building. We're going to give it a shot. It's in downtown Chicago, not in suburbs in Rosemont. So maybe you got a different audience. Maybe people in downtown proper of Chicago aren't going to make that trek to Rosemont, to the Allstate Arena. Give it a try. You know, maybe we have a new building in Chicago. And I thought the building was very nice. It's a nice building, but it was expensive. And, you know, you could do half the house in Rosemont and make twice the money building, you know, so it's an expensive building to run. So, right, we are a business and more about making money than anything else. So Rosemont was just definitely more economical in the grand scheme of things.
Well, if you're looking to go to an event and want to be a little economical, can I recommend Gametime? Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And man, I only wish we had Gametime back then. I could have snagged some great tickets for this. This is a super opportunity right now, because whenever you pick an event that you want to see, like my daughter a few years ago, we've told this story several times. It's a real deal Gametime success story. She wanted to see a concert that was totally sold out at the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville. I think it was Lana Del Rey or something like that. Anyway, she found tickets on another ticketing site that were last row. I'm talking about nosebleeds, back against the concrete, tippy top last row. And for just a few bucks more, I got her front row, front and center. And it's all because I had the Gametime app. I really recommend that you check this out. And I think that you're going to appreciate the new features they put, like Gametime Picks. You're even going to be able to get what they call the super deal. You get your seat view before you buy. And you're going to get the lowest price guarantee. What's cool though is the all-in pricing toggles to show you the total up front. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. And you don't have to just look at a seat map and wonder, is that a good spot? As I mentioned, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. But maybe if you're like me, this is the part that'll really get you going. The lowest price guarantee, where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a better deal on the same row. Come on now. There's nothing worse than sitting in that row and knowing, hey, the guy to my left elbow and the guy to my right elbow paid more than me. That'll never happen, or paid less than me. That'll never happen with Gametime. You're going to get 110% difference. Not just the best deal. They're going to beat it by 10%. I really believe in Gametime, and I love their customer service. They've got to have the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. I want to recommend that you just check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime and just download the Gametime app. Create an account and use our code Wrestle. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code Wrestle. That's WRESTLE for $20 off. So download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Promo code Wrestle.
Hey, it always is, right, Bubba?
You know.
Hey, so let's talk a little bit about, where we are with getting ready to run this show. We've talked about what's happening on the other channel and how, things are starting to heat up with WCW for the first time in what feels like years. And there's a report in the newsletter that they feel like, well, here's what's written. From what we understand and what seemed to be confirmed by hints dropped by Vince McMahon on a live Sunday night call-in show on the USA Network, is that this angle was talked about 2 months ago as being the resurrection of big box office for the company is being dropped. McMahon said almost matter-of-factly that it would be the one and only meeting of the two Undertakers, and that after this show there would be only one. Whether it was the Leslie Nielsen skits falling flat when it comes to building interest, or simply the idea of copying the most over and most unique character of the 90s while diluting the impact of the original, it's pretty well acknowledged this was an idea that was born dead. From what I've been told, the decision was made to remove Brian Lee from house show bookings for September, and that he would return sometime soon under a new name and a new look, and obviously as a new character. So there's a lot to unpack here. I do want to start first by talking about Sunday Night Slam, because that was the call-in show on USA Network that followed the pay-per-view that featured Vince McMahon. Can you chat me up about that? Like, I don't remember much about Sunday Night Slam.
That makes pretty much everybody.
Okay. So it was a one-off,
Yeah.
wasn't awesome.
Yeah.
Then we're done.
So we did a lot of those things where we would try things and sometimes it worked. A lot of times it wouldn't work and you wouldn't see it again. And this was one of those situations where, you always strive to be able to come up with something live that is interactive. Interactive is good as long as the folks on the other side are good and can go back and forth. So this was one of those attempts. Yeah, it obviously wasn't successful.
It's like, I think they only did it 3 times. The first one being here, August 21st, 1994. And they're going to run the last one, I think, right before WrestleMania in 95. And it's replacing specials that the USA Network had been running prior to major pay-per-view shows like SummerSlam Spectacular or March to WrestleMania or Survivor Series Showdown or what have you. But trying things, figuring out what works, doing more of what does and doing less of what doesn't work probably applies to that TV show and maybe Brian Lee. Do you think in hindsight, this was a good story and a good angle and a good concept? We just had the wrong guy for it? Or was it just, hey, maybe it was just okay and fans didn't
I think in hindsight, I think it was kind of meh.
Yeah.
But in the moment, and I think the idea was a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that the execution of it, again, in hindsight, in the beginning, it was working. But the audience, I don't think wanted, another Undertaker. They wanted their guy. So, knowing that we had time, the reason that it went on as long as it did was because we needed to establish the Ryan Lee Undertaker before the real Undertaker could come back. So you need time to establish that. If you do that, he comes in and the very next week Undertaker's there, then it's like you're there. You're telling stories here. You need people to buy into it and believe, okay, oh my God, this really is the Undertaker. Ted DiBiase's done it. And so it was longer than most as far as builds go. And Undertaker coming back, man, once they saw their guy, they're like, okay, he's going to kill him. And that was the viewpoint. So I, by no means do I think it was a dud in any way, shape, or form. And I also think that the Leslie Nielsen, to this day, people still talk to me about the Leslie Nielsen Domino's spots and his involvement in the show itself. So if we're still talking about it 30 some odd years later, then I think it's kind of successful, pretty good.
Yeah, I would say so. I want to ask you about the house shows on the way to this show. Business is really booming for Owen versus Brett. People love that story. I guess they started the story in November of the prior year, kick it into high gear at the Royal Rumble in January. We saw what happened at WrestleMania. Now we're on our way to SummerSlam. And the result is some of the best house shows strongest house show business that we had seen in a few years during the spring. But by the time SummerSlam rolls around, it's kind of petered out and house shows are down to the point where the past 2 months have been the lowest level of house show business in company history. What do you attribute the yo-yo effect, if you will, of, boy, they love it in the spring, but by the summer, they're over it?
I think that people wanted Brett to chase. This is my viewpoint. And Owen Hart was probably the hottest heel that we had without even trying. And felt if we tried, that he could have been the hottest heel. So one idea that was floated out there, did not happen, obviously, was that Owen would beat Brett for the title as soon as Brett got it back. And it would be Brett chasing Owen to SummerSlam. Some of the greatest matches, and I truly do believe one of the best stories we ever did was the whole Bret Hart, Owen Hart story. Mm-hmm. And brother versus brother, because I think most folks can identify with sibling rivalry, or if not you, your friends or somebody. If you have siblings, man, you're gonna fight. Some point in your life, you're gonna fight. And it was real. It was real. All of it. Owen felt it. Brett felt it. I thought it was lightning in a bottle. I just think that had we switched the title to Owen and had Brett chase it, those matches on the way, and probably dropped it back to Brett at SummerSlam, but those matches on the way would have been more interesting, because now I'm rooting for Brett to beat him. And Owen always had a way to come out on top and just squeak by. In this scenario, Owen was the one chasing, and Brett always just beat him. And I will also say this. I think the stuff that Brett did with Owen was maybe some of Brett's all-time best work ever as well. Because, I say, and all Brett did was beat him. I think that Brett gave Owen more than he gave probably anybody. Brett's whole MO was, I'm going to make the guy I'm in the ring with. And Brett always made Owen before he beat him. And it was just, I think that those two obviously had chemistry from day one when they were born. And it showed in the ring, and it showed as far as the audience reaction to it, because, look, man, they loved Brett and they hated that Owen had turned on him.
I love the storyline. It's interesting to see, how the company is trying to, find a new gear. It does feel like we're searching for an identity for this version of the WWF. I know that we're going to start, saying new generation and all of that, but do you think 94 is sort of the company in transition, with Hulk sort of finishing up in 93 and in 94, are we trying to find a new identity for the WWF sort of separate from Hulk Hogan, do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I think that a lot of it is, in looking at Brett too, it was a different type of champion. It was a different presentation.
Yes.
There was more emphasis in the matches themselves and the quality of the matches in general. But just by looking at, do a side by side, Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan, they're different. They're very different in presentation, in application, everything about it. Bret was out working his butt off every friggin' night to have the best match on the card and to get that audience into whatever it was that he was doing. And Bret fought for that. And there was a different presentation in every way, shape, and form. So yeah, I think the times were changing a little bit. And the way that the company was being presented overall, we were trying to go a little bit more sport, somewhat, if you will, and quality of in-ring presentation.
Let's talk a little bit about what happens the night before SummerSlam. We see Shawn Michaels and Diesel beat the Head Shrinkers in Indianapolis to capture the WWF Tag Team titles. And it's written in the torch that this is, quote, in a move likely made to leave Diesel with a belt even after losing to Ramon at SummerSlam, since Diesel is considered a major player by the WWF now. Let's talk a little bit about the thinking here. As a reminder, this is a house show, and we're switching the tag titles on a house show. It does feel like that happened more in this era. Was the thinking there, hey, if we're going to have Diesel drop the IC, we still want him to have some gold? This does that, or is it more about, hey, we want to pump up house show business and business has been down, so let's remind them anything can happen here in the World Wrestling Federation, or something else?
It's always the case. So, if you're looking to do something and your business is based on live events and your business is based on drawing people to come out and bring mom, dad, and the kids and pack them up in the car, go to the arena, buy some tickets, buy some popcorn, get some merchandise, buy a t-shirt, what have you, or a foam finger. That was our business model. So you want to pump that up. One way to do that is show them anything can happen, because a lot of times I think the audience goes there, they know they're going to get a show, but they know that nothing really significant is going to happen. At least there's a feeling sometimes, I think, that people feel that. So the idea is, holy shit, we had new tag team champions crowned in whatever, Indiana. And then, it could happen in your town. We can go to Gunnersville, Alabama, and by God, the same thing could happen. You better be there live so that you can see it, because we may not have a camera. We may not be lucky enough to catch it on camera and show it to you. That was, look, man, something that was done historically for all time. A big part of promotion back in the day, in the 70s and shit, was if you recorded your TV at your big events, you would sometimes promote no TV next week. None of these matches will be taped for television. So it's like, oh shit, man, I have to go see this because there aren't going to have any TV cameras. I'll never see it. It'll be gone. And that was a huge selling point to a live event then. And, it's just a different way to get people in the audience.
Well, something that you guys mastered here is figuring out how to get people in the audience. So as a reminder, we're saying house show business is down, the worst in the history of the company. And we're running a bigger venue than normal. It is a huge venue. It's a brand new venue. There's 23,000 seats. And it looks like when the show starts, it's a complete sellout. And it's written in the newsletters that there were a lot of comps and that there was a lot of paper in the city the day of, like even on the radio, they're telling you go to this location or that location for tickets. But perception is a big deal, and momentum is a big thing. And you don't want to be the first outfit in this brand new building and have half a house. You want it to look like pandemonium for Domino's, for Paramount, for the United Center. So we get folks in there. Do you remember this being an all hands on deck initiative? We got to get 23,000 people in the building for this one.
I think that's the goal with every event, not just this one. Goal for every event you do. You want to pack it out and you want to have as many people as you can possibly shoehorn into the building. So absolutely. And this was a very successful event to be able to go in and do what we did and have that many people come out. So I thought it was extremely successful, looked great, felt great. They were all enthusiastic and they were happy to be there.
There was something that made the papers after this is over, the pay-per-view's finished. And the headline is Nudity Show Replaces Wrestling. Wrestling fans here probably couldn't believe their eyes Monday night, but not because of some spectacular body slam. Instead of SummerSlam 94, TCI of Southern Maine mistakenly aired some dirty skin flick, as one anonymous caller put it Monday night. It certainly wasn't wrestling. Robert Gould, the cable systems general manager, said the mixed signals are the result of the company preparing to add new channels Thursday, including an adult pay-per-view service called Spice. He said the technicians turned on the equipment Monday to make sure the system was set to begin broadcast, and the adult movie overrode the World Wrestling Federation's pay-per-view offering and went to about 40 households in Bedford. Good said he didn't know the name of the movie, blah, blah, blah. This is obviously not the company's fault, but this has to be something that is frustrating that you're even somehow associated with this sort of thing. Does Vince understand, hey, shit happens, or is he blowing his stack when a headline like this brushes up against the WWF?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? It happens. Come on, 40 homes.
Yeah. Big deal.
40 homes in the grand scheme of things. Not a disaster. You know, the newspaper article and those folks searching for headlines, you know, like to make things up and things of that nature, then they'll make a big deal out of it. And, oh my God, this is, you know, it happened to those 40 folks. That was disappointing, but to the rest of the world, they never even knew anything about it.
Let's talk about the actual matches on the show. We're going to start with an interesting match full of Hall of Famers. It's Bam Bam Bigelow and IRS taking on the Head Shrinkers. The Shrinkers, of course, lost the tag titles right before to Shawn Michaels and Diesel in Indianapolis. It was not only announced on the show, but Michaels and Diesel were even on Regis and Kathy Lee the next morning with the belts. So pretty cool little all hands on deck PR deal. What'd you think of the chemistry here? The Head Shrinkers in 94 against Bam Bam Bigelow and IRS.
Actually, I thought it was damn good. Especially, you know, Bam Bam and like Samu and Fatu. Those guys, good Lord, man. Big guys, but they knew each other. They liked each other and they moved well together. So to me, I thought it was damn good. And Mike Rotunda, you could put in the ring with anybody. He's going to make it look great.
They have a 900 commercial because in this era, we're certainly pushing pay-per-view buyers to call the hotline for interviews and scoops and that sort of thing. And it's written here in the Observer at the time, or maybe this is the Torch, I suppose. During a 900 number commercial plug, they showed an unrecognizable individual with ripped to shreds arms talking on the telephone, which turns out to be Davey Boy Smith with a new hairstyle. I bring this up because the steroid trial was obviously a big deal during this time period. Once upon a time, he was shown the door going back to late 92. He's back here in 94. As far as you can recall, did the policy change? I mean, is there more heat on this subject? Is it less of a hot button issue? By SummerSlam 94, what is the company's stance on performance enhancing drugs, if there is one?
God, I don't even remember. Yes, there was always a stance. There was always a drug policy in place. I don't know what the iteration of it and evolution of it was at this point in time. I don't really recall.
Well, I'll tell you this: I'm on the gas. I'm rocking PEDs. I got a hot tag for my wiener, and I got it from BlueChew. Our next sponsor needs no introduction. You've seen the ads. You've heard us talk about it a million times, and I bet there's a big part of you, pun intended, that wants to try it. What am I talking about? BlueChew, of course. That's right. This isn't your grandpa's blue pill. This is the one, the OG chewable tablet for better sex. BlueChew is a unique online service that delivers to you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. And the process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew's tablets are made right here in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. BlueChew wants you to have better sex, so discover your options at BlueChew.com. I'm a big believer in this. I've tried it. I love it. You will too. Listen, why would you not want something to be a little better? That's what this is about. BlueChew wants the entire country rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast. And Bruce's wiener. Hey, so the next match is an interesting one. We've got Alundra Blaze taking on Bull Nakano. Something of an upset is the way it's written about here. Alundra gets the win in 8 minutes and 18 seconds and retains her women's title. 3 1/4 stars. The women's division in this era, for lack of a better word, seemed half-hearted. Is that the right phrase?
I don't think so. I mean, we were bringing in people like Bull Nakano for Alundra to work with.
Yeah.
So there was an attempt here to revitalize the women's division and kind of reinvent it with Alundra's vision. And, you know, she was a hard worker and a good worker that was not of the Moolah era, of the era that everyone had kind of become used to, which was the older established female wrestlers going out and just grabbing a hold and doing it. This was Alundra. She was a high flyer. She did a lot of things and she worked hard. And this was an attempt to bring in women. I mean, to say that this was lackluster, to say that this was, you know, half-hearted. I mean, that's an insult to me. That's somebody who is just really unaware of the times that we were in at this point, because Bull was considered one of the greatest women wrestlers in the world at that time. And this was an opportunity for us to reinvent what the WWF women's division had pretty much been in the past.
No argument for me about Bull Nakano. Who else was in the women's division at the time?
Well, we were looking at bringing in other Japanese wrestlers. The issue kind of became, while there were not really any good, let's just put it that way, there weren't really any outstanding or good female wrestlers at the time in the States. We were looking to Japan because they had some younger talent, but the audience, they didn't care. They wanted somebody that they knew, and they didn't feel that Bull Nakano or the Jumping Bomb Angels or anybody else was very interesting. So it became, all right, we're trying to reinvent this. We're trying to basically build it in many ways from Alundra's point of view. And it just didn't, the audience wasn't ready for that. I think the audience either wanted, you know, the beautiful kind of TNA women, or they wanted their old rough and rugged women. It was just, it was hard to gauge, but they weren't buying it.
Bull Nakano was one of my favorites. I don't mean to imply that her signing was half-hearted. I mean, usually, Alundra Blaze is in the only women's match on the show. And so the result is...
She was the only woman we had under contract.
That's why it's half-hearted, Bruce. You have
okay,
one...
Well, who? Okay, I'll throw the question back at you. Who would you have brought in?
I don't think I would have done a women's division.
Okay. But we did.
Yep.
But again, say, who would you bring in? Who would you bring in?
No, that's what I'm saying is there aren't any. I mean, she's working Leilani Kai on a dozen or 2 dozen house shows in a row, and then Luda Vachon for multiple house shows, and then Bull Nakano, and then Bertha Faye. But it's like the same 4 ladies over and over and over because there's just not a lot of female talent out there.
Right.
And so...
But you look at it from Bertha Faye, unbelievable talent. Yeah. Unbelievable talent. Luna Vachon. Unbelievable talent.
Yes.
Luna was probably ahead of her time at this point.
I would agree with that.
So we were trying.
Yeah.
And I just think the audience wasn't ready for it. And it was, again, there wasn't a huge plethora of women. And it's nice to have variety. And we were trying. We were trying to have a women's division. We wanted a women's division. And good Lord, man, had the business been, then what it is now with all these tremendous athletes, male and female, and I dare say in a lot of respects, even recently, you're getting a lot more female athletes that are sometimes better than the men. So it was just a different time. And, maybe it just wasn't. The audience told us, but we tried. Look, man, we tried.
I want to ask about Alundra Blaze here for a minute because, when we're saying a women's division, we really mean Alundra Blaze versus others, Alundra Blaze and others. And we're building the whole division around her. I'm not trying to make a Hulk Hogan comparison, but it did feel like in the 80s, it was Hulk Hogan and others. So now the women's division here is Alundra Blaze and others. Do you think that just the fans the talent pool wasn't there? Maybe that's part of it. The fans weren't ready for women's wrestling on the big stage. Or was there something missing in Alundra's presentation? Was she not the right person for the job? Like, I can say I was a huge Medusa fan, and I thought she had a fantastic look, and she had believability and credibility, and I enjoy Medusa in real life now. But I have to look at this critically and say, hey, this wasn't a huge hit. And I'm trying to figure out what it was. Do you think maybe the name Alundra Blaze, the way she was positioned, was she not the right person? Is it something else?
Look, before it was Alundra, it was Sherry. Before it was Sherry, it was Moolah. But in between there was Wendy Richter. So, there were many attempts along the way. I want to say that probably Wendy was the biggest name out of that because of the tie-in with Cyndi Lauper and Moolah and all of that stuff. And I don't know that the audiences still at this time were ready for women's wrestling to be a big part of the shows, no matter how talented they were.
Let's talk about, by the way, this is a fun match. It's 3 1/4 stars. Bruce and I, as you heard, are big Bull Nakano fans. One of the better Alundra Blaze matches that was on television. Go out of your way to see this one. It's kind of fun to look back and see where women's wrestling was and where it is now. Because
this was damn good.
It was. That's what I was going to say is we had like that. There's that space in between where there is lots of bra and panty matches and that sort of thing. But this is sort of the real precursor for what you're seeing with women's wrestling today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next match.
You got to see women perform.
Yes.
Comparable to the men and nail it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I really liked about it.
Go out of your way to watch this next one because it's an interesting match. First of all, if you're a fan of the Clique or you're a fan of the Outsiders, it's Razor Ramon versus Diesel for the Intercontinental Championship. Shawn Michaels is in Diesel's corner, and Walter Payton in Chicago is in Razor Ramon's corner. Man, there's a lot going on here. This feels big time. We know that, the following year we're going to use Lawrence Taylor and he's going to be involved here. But goodness gracious, talk to us about Scott Hall and Kevin Nash as Razor and Diesel for the Intercontinental title. And somehow Shawn Michaels isn't wrestling on the card and he's just standing across from Walter Payton. This is wild. What do you remember about how this came to be?
Two most important guys in that match were on the outside of the ring, and Shawn Michaels and Walter Payton.
Right.
So look, man, I thought the match itself was excellent, told a great story. And Walter Payton, sweetness himself from Chicago, one of the greatest Bears of all time, one of the greatest just professional football players of all time. I can't say enough good things about Walter Payton because he was so good, on the money, understood. When the guys were in the back going over their matches and they couldn't remember stuff, Walter remembered every single spot. Walter was telling the other guys where to go and what to do during that match. That's how good Walter Payton was. Razor got confused and Walter says, no, you need to over here and do this and what have you. That's how good Walter Payton was. And an absolute joy to work with. Was there on time, had a great attitude, had fun. Man, hats off, because he was not only a great football player, he was a great human being. And he is up there at the top of the list as far as people from outside of our world coming into our world and picking it up and having respect for it and nailing it and help make a Razor Diesel match be everything that it could have been and more. So this is one of my favorite matches as well, just because of watching and knowing the backstory of it and just seeing how good, how much that Walter added to it and how much help he was putting it together. You take two of the biggest stars in the business and Razor and Diesel, man, and you add that, Shawn on the outside. Again, not enough good things, but you go back and watch it and go, fuck, man, that was good.
Super fun. And it's fun to see Walter Payton celebrating in the ring with his son after the match. Shawn Michaels, it's been well established at this point, was not always easy to get along with and do business with in this era. How was he with, I know he's Mr. WrestleMania and blah, blah, blah. Has a lot of pride in his in-ring work. But here, he's not wrestling on the show, but he's working with Walter Payton. Was Shawn proud of that fact? Is he excited about it, or did he feel like it was less than?
Shawn loved it.
Yeah.
I think Shawn liked having the night off.
There you go.
And was such an integral part of the match and being able to work with Walter Payton. I think Shawn really enjoyed it because he wasn't having to go out there and take all the bumps and do everything. So I think he was happy about that.
I know that you talked about how great Walter Payton was to deal with, but how did it originally come together? Did y'all reach out to his team, or did he reach out to y'all, or somebody in between?
So Walter had a charity, and we did a lot of work with Walter's charity. And it just, the relationship was there. It's Chicago. Hey, man, would you like to be a part of this? And he jumped at the opportunity to be involved. And I don't think that we paid him. I think we gave a donation to his charity in lieu of a payment.
Let's talk a little bit about the Clique working together. Like, we've heard different folks, and it always gets spun negatively. And I understand it's just for clicks and conversation and what have you, but we would see on a pretty regular basis people taking issue with the Clique. And even after Shawn won the belt in 96, when someone asked him, it was Brett would discuss that once Shawn won the belt, he said that Shawn he wanted to work with his friends. He wanted to work with guys in the Clique. And here we have all those guys in the same match with Walter Payton. Is this a way to sort of keep everybody happy and keep the peace? They're all thrilled working together. No issues here, I guess is what I'm driving at.
No, of course they're all thrilled working together because they are all friends and they did like working with one another. But this was the logical story with where we were at the time.
Yeah. And it's a fun story too. You know, they're teasing the whole breakup of Shawn and Diesel, which means, hey, instead of us tagging together, we're going to be wrestling each other. And we know that is the direction we're headed for 1995. Like, I know that, you know, we're letting Razor beat Diesel here for the Intercontinental title. And once upon a time, the Intercontinental title was sort of a transitional belt to get you from, hey, a guy on the card to a guy with some momentum to, okay, now he's ready for the world title. It was on your way. I've even called it before with Jeff Jarrett. It was the assistant manager title. Before you get the big belt, you get the Intercontinental belt. And since we're going to have Diesel lose here, we do have him walk out as the tag champ to start the show. So he's still got some gold. Did you know at this point, we're going to Shawn and Diesel next year at WrestleMania?
No.
Okay.
No, not really. Not at all. Actually, no, not at all. Kind of came over probably another month, you know, where the audience reaction to Diesel just became so strong and undeniable. You sit out and you listen to the audience go, oh shit, we got a baby face on our hands. And, you know, sometimes it may be a night here or there, maybe half a night here or there. But man, when it's consistent every night and it grows, you know what you've got. So it wasn't there yet. It was on its way, but I'd say it probably took about another month. And then it was like, oh my God.
This was right in front of us the whole time.
Yeah. How didn't you guys see this?
Yeah. Next up is Tatanka pinning Lex Luger in 6 minutes and 2 seconds of what was described as a nothing match with a strong storyline. It started with a backstage interview with both Tatanka once again accusing Luger of selling out, showing all the video clips of the angle. They announced a 900-line poll where fans are voting, and Luger had sold out. That's the result. Coming to the ring, Tatanka had a mixed reaction, but Luger was heavily booed. And even though he worked as a face in the match, the fans still booed him. No matter how hard they shove him down people's throat, people just don't care about him. This match was going nowhere until DiBiase showed up at 5.5 minutes. As Luger saw DiBiase and told him to get lost, Tatanka snuck up from behind with a schoolboy for the pin. Luger and DiBiase are arguing after the match, and Luger kicked DiBiase's money out of his hands, and at this point, Tatanka turned on Luger. This was a great angle from start to finish, as it had intrigue from the start and a strong finish. Tatanka destroyed Luger after with 2 back splashes, and Tatanka and DiBiase hugged. And as they were leaving, DiBiase told Tatanka to go back, and he did. And he used DiBiase's $1 million dream to lay Luger out and stuff money down Luger's throat. Luger had to be helped out. He gave it 0.5 star for the match, but 2 stars for the angle. He really, really enjoyed the angle. And this is the first time we see this version of Tatanka. What'd you think of Tatanka turning here and just the overall presentation of the angle?
Thought it was, I thought it was good. I don't think the audience was behind Tatanka enough to care when he turned. They were like, okay. I think they would have probably preferred for Luger to turn.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because that was the story that we had built up and everything, and it was a little bit of a, that was a switch at the end, and holy cow. And I think the audience probably would have gone, you know what? I was expecting Lex. She gave me Lex. I'm happy with it. And they were like, okay, it's Tatanka turn, but I really don't care that much about him. And it came off a little bit flat. And I don't think that, and maybe this is good. Maybe in hindsight, maybe it's good, but I will never, ever, as long as I live, man, the first promo that Tatanka did, with the $1 Million Man, he talks about how great it is, all the things that you get with money, and he goes, "Look at me," and it was essentially saying, "I've got men's warehouse suits now," and I'm like, what? And we had given him the line, specifically given him the line. Got Gucci shoes, and he goes, I buy my shoe. Now I can buy my shoes at Florsheim. And everything we gave him to be like the $1 million man's guy, to go over the top with it, he went like the guy in Sheboygan shopping at the mall. Another shout out to Sheboygan, by God. And I was like, Florsheim? He goes, yeah, man, those shoes are expensive. Some of those things are like $60. Florsheim. Told you Gucci. And it was, he didn't get it. You have to learn it, you have to be it, and you have to kind of live it. And I don't think that Chris really got it. Chris is who he is. And a wonderful human being.
Wade Keller would say he thought that this was the highlight of the event, but he didn't think it was played out as well as he expected. While Luger delivered what would be expected, Tatanka was too one-dimensional. Tatanka had to be more likable and less outraged leading into this angle for his turn to be infuriating. The guy was so damn annoying and accusatory in the weeks and minutes leading to the match at SummerSlam that I was happy the guy turned. Had he been more self-righteous, saying things like, I would never sell out, or money isn't important as pride, or integrity is more important than success, his turn would have been more hypocritical and thus more effective. It was still good, but not nearly as enjoyable as I thought it would have been when it actually played out. In hindsight, do you think Tatanka was just a miss as a heel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's not a heel.
Yeah.
He's just not a heel.
Luger is, though.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the next match here, because I think we can agree this is what sold all 23,000 tickets. It wasn't Mabel. It was Double J, Jeff Jarrett, picking up a win over Mabel in 5 minutes and 55 seconds.
He was on the show.
Mabel? Yeah, he was. Mabel sat on Jarrett after blocking a sunset flip. Jarrett's going to move. Mabel's going to sit on the map, and then he's pinned. And it's written here, I was surprised they had a guy that large do such a clean finish to someone so small. That's hard to even read in 1994, but I guess that was the thinking at the time. It is interesting to take a look, though, at the way Mabel was used in this era. Like sometimes it feels like he's in the main event, and other times, thankfully, he's not. But I guess you could say that same thing about Lex Luger as well. Anything you can tell us about Mabel and Double J here?
No. No. I mean, it was what it was. It was just a match on the card. And, for today, probably would have been one of those, hey, man, we're going to go ahead and kill this. Shouldn't have been on the card. No reason for it to be on the card.
Next up is the co-main event, I guess we'll call it. It's Bret Hart and Owen Hart in a cage match, and it is unbelievable. If you're going to watch one match on this show, this is the one. Bret wrote in his book that this was the inaugural event of the brand new United Center, and 23,000 tickets sold out in hours. That's not exactly true. The entire Hart family was there except for Keith and Allison, and all of them were going to be involved in the storyline of the cage match between Owen and me, which the WWF had told us was going to be our last match together. We knew the match itself was going to be easy, despite the fact that we couldn't chance any blood because of the latest ticks on Vince's hide were Citizens Group lobbying to censor TV violence. Vince was forced to remove anything even remotely violent, or he risked losing time slots. Besides, neither Owen nor I wanted to put my poor mother through a match where two of her sons would be covered with blood. Our only option was to make as many dramatic near escapes as we could. This is an incredible match. Bret talks about how he had 5 days of rest afterwards because this match just took such a toll on him. An incredible performance, 32 minutes and 22 seconds. And as they're building the cage, because this is the big blue cage that we're all so familiar with, that takes a few minutes. Well, as they're constructing it, it gives us a chance to recap all the clips going back to Survivor Series the prior year and some interviews along the way, including interviewing the family to sort of build the story. And as we mentioned, we've got some of the family right there in the front row. You couldn't ask for a better performance, a better story, better execution.
And they're gonna be talking to Brett and what's it, Owen, and it'll be great. The big, where's the big rhino? Where's the rhino? Jim, this fucking big bastard over there. Can y'all please give my job? Okay, that's it.
I really enjoyed this match a lot. Wade would say the match began slow and it was repetitious at times, but not so repetitious that the drama didn't remain during the near escapes. A good, innovative finish helped. And he said that the match was just too long, too repetitive, and too methodical to be a show saver. It's weird because Wade gave this 3 stars, but Dave gave it 5 stars and says this probably won't.
Because one in the Tokyo Dome. If it was in the Tokyo Dome, be like 18 stars.
5 is as high as they went in 94.
Oh, well, yeah, well, okay.
This probably won't win match of the year, but it beat their WrestleMania match. And I believe it'll be years before we see a cage match under these limiting circumstances that are this good. You know, that is something that we see a lot of old school people talk about. Like, hey, if you're going to have a cage, you got to have blood. If you're going to ban blood, just don't do cage matches because that's what a cage match was designed to do. But here is an example of a cage match without blood that, according to Dave Meltzer, was 5 stars. I really enjoyed the match. I don't get why Wade maybe didn't like it as much. Maybe it's because you and I both really like the brother storyline. But I was fascinated to see Dave say he liked it better than their WrestleMania match. Everybody remembers the classic from WrestleMania 10 with Owen and Brett. When you compare and contrast those 2 matches, which is your favorite, Bruce? The Mania
by far the WrestleMania match was by far better. And look, I've got, a different viewpoint of this match because it was so heavy. It was way too long. Could have been done in half the time. And it was a great story. Make no mistake about that. The execution of it was great. It was just way too long. And it hurt the show. It hurt the show being too long. I can't knock, anything that they did in the match other than just they could have cut out half of what they did. And still, then it would have been great. But if you ask me between WrestleMania and this, I think WrestleMania was a lot better just because of the finish and the match. And it was their first time and it was magical. But I can't, really say anything bad about this other than it was just way, 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 way too long. And, they did their thing. We got everything accomplished that we wanted to get accomplished. But this was also the time of you had a window on pay-per-view that you had to get within that window or they cut you off. And all the advertisements, everything was centered around one match. That was Undertaker versus Undertaker. And we had to lose like 15 minutes of that match because of this match. So I just thought it was, uncalled for. And if someone had done that to Brett, I think Brett would have been very upset. And for him to go out and do that, I just thought it was not good. It was not good.
Well, there's the rest of the story, and that's what you tune in for here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, the rest of the story. I'm sure after banging around that cage for 32 minutes, and we mentioned that Brett had 5 days off of rest before they have to go to Europe, I'm sure he wishes back then he could have reached for some of the fine products from theamazingkind.com. Bruce has been put through the ringer this last year and a half, multiple surgeries, but he knew what to reach for immediately after. Theamazingkind.com had him hooked up. That's where he could get his hookup for CBD, CBG, and CBN. CBN to help him sleep at night, CBG to help him focus and block out some of the pain, and CBD to help with some of that pain. See, there's anti-inflammatory properties in sort of inside CBD. It also helps with muscle recovery. My wife uses the Amazing Kind after her workouts every morning. It's a CBD topical for muscle recovery. It can also help with your skin health. If you've got acne or psoriasis or eczema or dry skin, man, the Amazing Kind can help. It's also your hookup if you've got pain management for chronic conditions like fibromyalgia or neuropathy. Lady at the office who I work with real closely, she suffered from migraines for years. I let her try some Amazing Kind. Man, super helpful. Highly recommend that you check out theamazingkind.com. First of all, because the guy, the founder, he's just like us, man. He's a big wrestling fan. He actually used to work for the WWE as a producer, working on their commercials and marketing. But this is a family-owned business now, theamazingkind.com. They specialize in plant-based pain relief balms, creams, and gels for your muscles and joints. But also they've got the infused oils for your mood support and sleep. And all their products are of the highest quality, sourced from GMP certified manufacturers, tested for quality and purity to ensure that what you're buying is exactly what it says on the label. So if you haven't already, reach for it. Try it out. I'm telling you, you're going to absolutely love it. Go right now to theamazingkind.com, and you want to be sure to use our promo code WRESTLE. You'll get 20% off all your orders when you go to theamazingkind.com and use our promo code WRESTLE. That's theamazingkind.com and use the promo code WRESTLE. That's spelled WRESTLE, and you'll get 20% off your entire order. By the way, in my real life, I'm helping people save money left and right over at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. And I'm telling you, it's not a matter of if we can save you some cash, but a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com. We've routinely helped our podcast listeners save $5, $6, $7, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to get started. Check out this 5-star review that we got. Conrad, Diane, and Steven helped us get approved when nobody else would even consider us. This is the second time we've used his team. Diane was always quick to answer my panicky questions and never seemed bothered by them. I would have never thought being a wrestling fan would ever pay off for anything, but it did. We were treated like family and not a number. It will always be appreciated. That's William H. over in Norman, Oklahoma. He's saving some cash, and you can too. Again, you don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. But if you've got a second mortgage, if you've got a car payment that you're struggling to keep up with, if you're maxed out on your credit cards and you feel stuck making the minimum payments, it's not a matter of if we can save you money. It's a matter of how much. And I'm sure you've seen the news. Interest rates are on your side. They're moving in the right direction. This could be the second chance you've been looking for. And at savewithconrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. Get yourself a quick quote. Even talk to a live person at savewithconrad.com. Let's talk a little bit about the main event. We're finally here. It's Undertaker, Mark Calloway, against Undertaker, Brian Lee. They've got a 7-minute ring entrance with Paul Bearer coming out alone. And then the coffin that the real Undertaker was buried in at Royal Rumble is wheeled out. And there's some hooded men that look like they made a wrong turn. From
Druids.
There you go. In the casket is actually a giant urn. And when Paul Bearer opens the urn, there's a nice little thunder and lightning show. And finally, the real Undertaker shows up. The special effects were really, really good. And it was done with perfect timing, where as soon as it finishes, the bell rang. And here we go. Brian Lee versus Mark Calloway. It gets -1 star in the Observer. It's not well reviewed. People didn't love the execution. The storyline was intriguing, but the match, maybe they felt like was, well, Wade called it a gigantic letdown. What did you think?
It was, because it was robbed of its time. In order to set the stage for the match, you needed more time up front to do the mirror, Groucho Mark stuff and mirroring each other's moves and what have you, so that you could get lost in it a little bit. All that was rushed and a lot of it taken out. So you got into a match, and the Brian Lee Undertaker was not able to really get any heat. because there just wasn't time, and it turned into a squash match. And Brian, they had this match in their head, and they'd actually, worked it out to the point that mirror stuff, doing each other's stuff back and forth, was a big part of that match. And when you take that away, look, Brian wasn't the worker that could adapt in the ring as easily as Mark could, and it showed, and it wasn't good in that regard, because they were trying to move and change on a dime in there, and it was all, the real Undertaker doing that versus the $1 Million Man's Undertaker. So no, it stunk. It really stunk. But it was not the fault, in my opinion, of the two guys in the ring. I think it was the fault of not having enough time to tell that story properly, and for them to have the platform to work for what the show was built up to be. That part of it is a shame, because I think that they could have done something really special there.
Do you think part of it may have been the Undertaker persona is like this slow, plodding, methodical character, and that works in a match when you got one guy going normal speed and one guy slowing sort of the horror movie speed, if you will. But when two guys are doing it, is that too much? Does it take you out of it? Does it feel boring or less than?
But see, that's the issue, is that it was to tell a story, to start off that way, and then
pick it up.
The real Undertaker to pick it up and go to a new level that you've never seen before.
I got you.
You didn't get that. You didn't get the build. You didn't get any of that. All you got was the crap. And it just wasn't good. Just not good.
Wade would say the limits placed on the Undertaker character were never more clear than at SummerSlam. It's time for Vince McMahon to loosen the reins on the Undertaker's in-ring character and let Calloway show off more of his skills and turn up the energy level now and then. Wade would say, when Todd Pettengill was hyping the SummerSlam Encore show, he said how the crowd was going crazy during the Undertaker match, crazy with boredom. Speaking of that match, apparently the Hart match went much longer than expected, and at the last second, Lee and Calloway were told to cut their 15-minute match down to just 8 minutes. The two had worked out a match, and with the cut, didn't adapt well, and they were rushing to get their spots in. So I know that you're not a big Dave Meltzer fan, but boy, he had a scoop here. He nailed it. I don't remember ever hearing that match had been cut for time until you said it, except for this one little line in the Observer. Boy, it changed the whole freaking main event and presentation.
Absolutely. Really did.
And
ruined it.
And it maybe changed the upward trajectory of Brian Lee, because it was both in the Torch and the Observer that, okay, this Undertaker thing is dead, but he'll be back with a new gimmick and a new name. It'll be a biker persona. And that's correct. But this was 94, and that didn't happen until 97. This is his last match in the company for 3 years. He comes back in June of 97, but from August of 94 to June of 97, he gone. In an alternate universe, if they had the full match, do you think that Brian Lee would have had an opportunity to stick around as that biker gimmick, or was he on his way out no matter what?
He was already on his way out.
Okay.
Really would have had to blow people away, and just, he, for numerous reasons, he was on his way out.
Around the same time, Brian Lee, as the Undertaker, wound up in a Bollywood movie, wrestling and then killing Crush. Did you hear about that? Did you know about this?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about Brian Lee portraying the Undertaker in a Bollywood movie.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he ever did that again after that.
You don't like Brian Lee worth a damn, do you?
No, I do like Brian Lee. That's what I said. When I said he doesn't know how to get out of his own way.
I got you.
His decisions are not really that good. Him doing stupid shit like this is where it's like, dude, hello? Because you're not only doing it where it's wrong and everything else, but you're also screwing over one of your best friends. The guy that brought you to the dance, and you're screwing him over. So, it's just like, God, come on, dude. Buy a Clue somewhere. Go to Clues R Us. Buy yourself one.
When the buy rate comes in, it's down from the prior year's WrestleMania. That's not a shock, but there's $488,000 at the gate. That makes it the 10th largest live house in the history of U.S. wrestling. Easily, it's going to be the second highest of the year behind WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden in North America. So there's about 20,000 paid, so maybe 3,000 comps or so. But on the other side of this, business is down. Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, and the Meadowlands do 4,300, 2,500, and 2,000, perceived to be all-time lows. Do you remember coming out of SummerSlam and seeing some of these live event results? I mean, the idea that you got Madison Square Garden and there's 4,300 people in it, boy, you lost money on that show. I mean, there's no other way to say that. On the one hand, going into SummerSlam, hey guys, we got Domino's, we got Paramount, we got a big buy-in. We're going to use the United Center. We're going to have 20,000 people there. On the other side, we're limping along. And this Undertaker thing that we thought, I know you said is going to be a one-off. Did you already have something in mind? Like, here's where we're going next. And here's our next moonshot.
We did, look, it was a sign of the times, and it was a sign of, okay, well, maybe this bread experiment isn't working. Maybe we need to do something new, which we did. And we did pivot, but yeah, business was not great by any stretch of the imagination. And, it's discouraging when you're sitting there and you're banging your head against the walls, and you just keep, you got to just keep fighting and keep moving forward and doing what you can and try to adjust and make better. But it was, business wasn't great.
When you take a look back, because we just recently talked about the Kane story, and there's so many similarities, obviously, with, the fake Undertaker and Kane as the Undertaker's brother. With all the success you enjoyed from the Kane perspective and the Kane storyline, is there anything you can look back at this Undertaker thing and say, boy, if we'd have just done this differently, it would have worked?
No, I think that, look, I think what we did was good. I think that the match, wasn't. I think that some of the things that Brian Lee did in that time frame were very disappointing and, unraveled, some of the greatest plans. But it was, I don't know that I would change anything. And throughout it, you talk about the highs, getting to spend a week with Leslie Nielsen, work with him, and just get to pick, an absolute acting genius and funny guy, pick his brain. I thought that was absolutely amazing. And we spent a lot of time. We went out. There was one night where I had told him about a particular establishment in Connecticut where the only thing that the women wore were knee pads. And he was intrigued by that. And we went there, and he was wearing his Frank Drebin suit in this, let's just say that it's not a place that you would, if you were driving down the street, you would probably, driving down this street, keep your doors locked and your windows up and speed through it as quickly as you could. No, we stopped and went into this bar and he went in as Frank Drebin, and it was incredible. But we had so much fun throughout that week. And then I'm going to share this story about Leslie Nielsen, just to give you an idea of what kind of a human being he is. In all of his movies that he did, the Naked Gun movies, he did a lot of those with George Kennedy as his sidekick, as his partner in the movies. And George was on, having a really bad time at this point in his life. He had an issue with his back, and he couldn't walk, and he was wheelchair bound. As you can see by the pictures, obviously he could stand up and take a few steps, but he was in bad shape. And Leslie asked us, I said, hey, is there any way we could write George in to the payoff scenes and have him there with me in Chicago? And you guys could give him $5,000, take it out of what you're paying me and maybe give him $5,000. But I'm paying for it. I'll pay for it. I'm not asking you guys to pay him. So Vince, being so impressed by this, paid George 10 and didn't take anything out of Leslie's payday. And George was there with him, and it made Leslie happy. And it was great to have the two of those guys, man, just to, go back and forth and relive that. And you talk about two pros that you could give them the scenario of a scene, and they just did it and did it naturally and did it well. And man, I treasured those moments. Without a doubt, the number one celebrity that I ever worked with is Leslie Nielsen.
Shout out to Leslie Nielsen. What an incredible performer. So many fun memories of watching him on television. Let's talk a little bit about the marketing piece that comes out with multi-channel news on the other side of WrestleMania. Pizza pies helped tighten SummerSlam score dough. I don't know what that means. Bolstered by a national marketing campaign with Domino's Pizza, Titan Sports generated higher than expected buy rates for its August 29th WWF SummerSlam pay-per-view event. Buy rates for the event were up as much as 10%. Now, we know that in reality, this show wound up being less successful, fewer buys than 1993. But in certain markets, not all the markets, but in certain markets, they were up as much as 10%. And the spokesperson for the WWE, am I saying this guy's name right? Skip Desjardins?
Skip Desjardins.
Okay. That fellow is quoted here and giving a lot of credit to Domino's. We had a lot of cable systems involved at a much higher level than before, and part of that had to do with Domino's. We're also touting the success of the campaign with Paramount Pictures. We talked about that 12-page direct mail piece. Well, they printed 1.4 million copies of that went out there. So we've got pay-per-view quotes from Titan and even Priscilla Riley, who works with Cablevision in New Jersey, saying the Domino's and Paramount promotion really helped get the word out there. They've got other quotes from other pay-per-view managers like John Woods, who said to actually have a 0.2% increase in buy rate with an increase of 10,000 addressable subscribers from last year is extremely positive. They're continuing this, but it goes on and on and on, just celebrating the success of these campaigns. And it reminded me of what you talked about earlier, where you said, when you do one of these economic impact type reports, and that's really what this is. Before we were maybe using that buzzword, but the number is over 100 million impressions featuring the Domino's promotion were featured in the marketplace prior to the event. And it's one thing to say 100 million impressions in 2024. And by the way, that's huge, no matter the era. But it's important to remember, this is 94. This is pre-social media. This is pre-internet.
Yeah.
So you got all of these impressions with mailers and television commercials and printed material. This is not like we sent a tweet. We posted something on Instagram. We had a cute YouTube video. Man, WWE was ahead of the curve here in a big way.
Yeah. And it's also important to point out, as you just said, reading the multi-channel news, whatever, I would take their numbers before I take Dave Meltzer's any day of the week, because they actually are journalists that actually do their due diligence. There was no public, anything on these numbers. And this is, Dave's numbers and Wade's numbers are probably calling a couple of their friends and saying, did they buy it? Did they buy it? And guessing at the numbers or what have you. So I will take, those numbers over theirs any day of the week on any and everything, because at least it's true journalists. But yeah, you look at it, and I think it was a huge success because it was a huge success setting the stage for what's to come and what's to come in the advertising world and how the company is presented and viewed by that advertising world, to where, hey man, you go with WWF, they're going to over deliver and you're going to more than get your money's worth. And that was the message coming out of it.
Cole Swinson asked, Bruce, were there ever any plans to have Owen go over and beat Brett for the WWF title that have set up a rematch at the Survivor Series 94 or possibly the Royal Rumble 95? I know at this point, this is just an interesting question. Was Owen ever seriously considered to beat Brett and become the world champion?
It was by me. I would say it was considered, but it didn't get much beyond that.
Well, we're going to get a lot beyond that next week when we're talking about Sergeant Slaughter, you maggots. And then Unforgiven 2004 with Randy Orton, now a babyface, defending the title against Triple H after being kicked out of Evolution. We're also going to finally deliver on that Powers of Pain episode we promised earlier this year. We got some Ask Bruce Anything on deck and a whole lot more. Your home for all things Bruce Prichard is somethingtowrestle.com. If you haven't already, hustle over there and hit the subscribe button. Turn on your notifications bell. It's somethingtowrestle.com. Bruce, is there anything else we need to mention about SummerSlam 94, or did we get it all?
No, I think we got it all. It was good. Look, man, it was a good time. That was some fun, and enjoyed doing that stuff because I like being involved in the pre-stuff and working with Leslie and Taker and doing all of that. And it was a fun production time.
When you are recommending this show to someone, would you recommend they see Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano or Brett and Owen, or is there another match you prefer?
I think overall, I got to tell you, man, the Razor Diesel match, I thought was a high point, and it was a high point because, again, Walter Payton being involved and Sean, they made it. It was a magical, beautiful dance, and seeing that come together through the day was another special moment.
We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that this past weekend was the 1-year anniversary of a couple of major passings that we had in professional wrestling. We lost Bray Wyatt a year ago this past weekend. And we also lost someone who was very important in your wrestling fandom and your just professional wrestling career. The late, great Terry Funk left us a year ago. And there was an event that happened overseas in Japan this past weekend. The Terry Funk Memorial event. It was a death match with his brother Dory, who I believe is 83 years old, taking an exploding bat here. I wanted to give you a minute to talk about Terry or talk about Dory trying to pay tribute to his brother and taking an exploding bat here. I mean, some of that stuff is a little far-fetched and a little silly, but boy, he's paying homage to his brother, and I'm sure somewhere Terry was having a big laugh about it.
I'm sure Terry enjoyed it and appreciated it. And I think that when you look around, anytime that you watch wrestling, you're going to see bits and pieces of Terry Funk because he was just that influential in the business overall, from his promos to his work to the way that he approached the business psychology. Terry Funk was one of a kind and one of the absolute greatest to ever lace up a pair of boots, and proud to have had time with him and tell me as a 16-year-old kid, don't let him cut your knee, Prichard. They'll go in for the rest of your life. And having to say that to my mom that I'm not going to get surgery because Terry Funk told me not to. And little things like that. Then as time went on and getting to be a part of Terry's family and Vicky, and just Terry was a wonderful human being. And every single time that you watch wrestling, I guarantee you there's a piece of Terry Funk in what you are looking at, no matter what it is. He just was that influential. He was just that good. He was just that innovative. And by God, he's Terry Funk. And, you talked about Bray. I think that a lot can also be said of the exact same vein in Bray, in that, a lot of what is going to be in the future in this business is going to be because of some of the things that came out of that head. And that was a unique head and extremely bright and genius brilliance that existed in there that just needed to be channeled, man, because he had
some of the most incredible and creative ideas that I've ever experienced. And both missed greatly in this business. I'll tell you that.
Tell your people you love them. And we love hanging out with you guys. We'll be back next week right here on somethingtowrestle.com.
And I love you. And you know what? Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Listen, we made a dent, folks, over at YouTube. We made a little bit of a dent. Go on over to YouTube and view Freebird Road by Michael P.S. Hayes. It's a tribute to his best friend, Terry Gordy. And, of course, sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days. Now they're gone. And enjoy it, man, but know that it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place of dedicating to his brother in arms, Terry Gordy, from Michael Hayes. But I want to get those numbers up. I need those numbers up because I have something to prove. And remember, every time that you see Michael Hayes out in the wild, just give him a do. And from me to you, rock on. Do.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.